From survival to survival and how to get out of it. It is a really interesting pattern that I went through and so many of my clients go through. It's actually one of the reasons that I created Visionaries, my 6-month group coaching program, because I saw so many people falling into this same pattern of survival after survival and feeling really stuck. Let me break this down for you. So many people go from surviving in life because they are deeply impacted by their trauma and they don't know how to get out of it, right? And it's like, okay, like I'm literally surviving to live. Then they realize they need to create some change, do some healing work, do the work, and they do that. And they get out of that place of surviving for life to a place that's good, only to realize that they're surviving again, but in a different way. This is why we don't always notice that we're still in survival mode or that we're in a different type of survival mode because we're not traumatized, we're not triggered all the time, we don't feel hopeless, we feel good. So it goes unnoticed because what we know and our experiences taught us that survival is living in this really heightened state where, the fight flight mode is so obvious and so present in everything that we do. Then we roll on to a place where it's not so obvious, it's not so present. Maybe it's still there subconsciously, but don't kind of notice it. And so it's really easy to miss, to not realize. And again, when you reach this point, so many parts of your life are different, right? What surviving, to make it real for you, what surviving after healing your trauma might look like might be living your life on autopilot, doing what's expected of you, not really having any fulfillment or purpose in your life, questioning yourself and your actions, people pleasing, being the good girl, being the overachiever, falling into different patterns or conditioning that don't necessarily make you feel great, but weren't as bad as what it was. All of these things, patterns, behaviors, habits, leave you feeling kind of like, oh God, let me just get through the end of the day and then I can check out, or let me just get over this part and then I'll be okay. And maybe you notice that there's a pattern of burnout that's very present, or you're constantly exhausted. Again, you think, I just need to get over this hump and then I can rest. Then I'll be okay. But by the time you're over that hump, you don't rest, you crash because you've got nothing left, right? So, how do we get out of it? That's what you're here for. You want to know, how do we get out of survival mode? And again, when I talk about this, I'm not in big letters, talking about those periods of time where you're inundated with work, your kids require more attention, you've got deadlines coming up, there's heaps of social things on, like there's periods where you go through where it's like, oh my God, I just like, have no extra time. I just need to survive. I'm not talking about that because we all have that. We all have those little periods, whether it's a week or two, or, usually December for a lot of people is a period of that where it's like, there is so much on. I just need to get through this. So we're not talking about that. I'm talking about getting you out of a situation where every single day you are operating from survival mode. First, no surprises here, I wouldn't think, but it starts with identifying the patterns and habits that are playing out in your life that are contributing to survival mode. What is it that you're doing? How are you being? How are you showing up that is contributing to you being in survival mode? So take time to look at those, to break them down, to start to implement boundaries and shift the way that you're operating subconsciously. This takes effort, right? So I say this, I'm like, just acknowledge them and then shift it. It's probably going to take a little bit of time for you to acknowledge it and then create and implement the shifts that you want. So please don't, if you're listening to this, don't think that this is like, oh, yeah, I just do this in a space of 10 minutes and my whole world will change. It doesn't work that way. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry. When you've been living in a pattern, it takes time to break that pattern. But first, we acknowledge, we identify, we change, we put boundaries in place. Then once you kind of like, okay, like I'm not living my life to please everybody else, or I'm not like I'm taking time for myself, or um, like I'm not living on autopilot, like I'm actually being present. I've got some routines in place. Then you have to find meaning, some purpose. Find the things that bring you joy, give you life, and find meaning and purpose in every day. And that could be, it could be going to the gym. Maybe the gym or exercising has been shuffled down on your to-do list because of all of the other priorities. And you're like, do you know what? I'm going to the gym. My partner and I recently had this where he's had a couple of years where, he's gone to the gym most mornings when he wants, and where we lived, like it was easy for him to do that. And then I was kind of straight training very sporadically. And I realized that I was just so unhappy. So unhappy in many ways because I wasn't training. And so now it was like, I said, well, I'm going to join a gym, like an actual gym with classes, as opposed to just going to a gym by myself. And which means that I had to put in some boundaries, but we also had to work together to figure out ways that we can both go because it's important to both of us. It's not just about me, it's about both of us. But that was a change for us because it was always, I don't want to say always all about him, but it kind of was. And now it's about both of us. And to make this real, I'm not saying like burn your life to the ground. If you are in a job that doesn't light you up, the chances are, when we think about how much time we spend at work, you spend so much time of your life, of every day working. And if you're doing it somewhere where, you know, you feel like your soul's being crushed, it's not going to be much fun. It's not going to be much fun. And of course, you're going to be in survival mode, knowing that you have to show up and get up to spend nearly your whole day somewhere doing something that just feels like it's crushing you. That's not a fun time. That's not what you want to be doing. Because then you go home, you do dinner, you get into bed, and you get up and do the whole thing again. Like there is no purpose in there. There's no fulfillment. There's no joy, right? Of course, you're in survival mode. Now, you don't have to burn your whole world to the ground. So I'm not saying you must wake up tomorrow and go in and quit that job, right? Not realistic. Maybe it is if you know that you can and that's going to make you, the heavens open up and you feel so amazing, then go for it. But I'm not saying that. Because the reality is most people are working because they have to, right? We have to earn money. And doing that, like going in and quitting without nothing to go to is like, oh, really anxiety fueling for me. Not something I could do. I'm a very cautious person. Um, so I'm not saying that, right? But in addition to that, I'm also not saying that you don't quit your job at some stage, right? Because you might. If you know that this job is not fulfilling you in any way, then you're going to want to find another job. You're going to want to do something else with your time that gives you purpose and meaning. Because when you have fulfillment in your life, when you're training, when you're with your friends, whether you're with your family, whatever it is, and I'm talking about like fulfillment outside of work, work isn't going to matter as much, right? So if your whole life is your job and your job does not inspire you, you're going to be in survival mode and you're probably going to be pretty miserable. So my advice, for what it's worth, is find something outside of work that brings you joy. Even if it's something on your lunch break. It might be arts and crafts or ceramic making, I don't know what it's called, collaging or painting or writing or exercising or walking with friends or having coffee catch up with friends or going out for dinners or going for swims or, there's so many things that you could be doing. And when you have something that gives you purpose, something that makes you feel good, something that you really enjoy doing, the shitty, mundane task of getting up and going to a job that doesn't inspire you doesn't feel so bad. It's going to be frustrating and you're going to notice that it really doesn't bring you joy, but it's not going to be too bad. And you can see from that when you don't have anything outside of work, it's going to be really like it's hard not to think about anything else. It's hard not to get caught into that, um, you know, doomsday thinking and in survival mode because you want to check out. Like you just shut off because no one wants to live like that. And it's interesting because I identified as my job for many, many, many years. You know, when I worked in recruitment, I worked in recruitment. When I was a cop, I was a cop. I'm in the police force. And then, you know, when I was an investigator at the uni, I wouldn't say I was so attached. Like it wasn't my identity because I'd started to do that work. But what I noticed was when I left the police force, it was very much my identity. And yes, I trained. I still went to the gym. I trained a lot actually, but I didn't really have anything else outside of that. It was so consuming. And when that was taken away from me, it was like, holy fuck, like who am I? You know? And it's really interesting because I thought I was so fulfilled. And then I take it away, I'm like, actually I wasn't, you know? And so we can get stuck in it. I was in survival mode. I had so much shit that I needed to deal with that I hadn't dealt with. And that was kind of the universe's message to me or smack in the face to be like, you got to do some work, lady. And it's just so eye-opening. It's so eye-opening to me to look back and see how long I lived in survival mode. You know, waking up being like, oh my God, this is such a slog. You know, in saying that, there were parts of my life that were good. You know, I didn't think that I was unhappy, but I definitely lived on autopilot. Definitely, 100%. And was just consumed by one thing. And there were so many gaps. And having that realization now is really quite eye-opening. So, first things first, find something meaningful. Find something that brings you life. A hobby, a passion, a creative project. Something that gives you time to yourself. Something that feels rewarding, fulfilling, like fun. You know, like when you're done, you're like, oh, like you want to tell everyone about it. It's like, oh, I just feel really great. Then once that becomes the norm, so once you have implemented something and it's become a practice, a habit, something that is part of your everyday, allow yourself to tap into what you want. You know, what are your deepest desires? What are you being called to do? You know, for me, breath work, meditation, and journaling always helps me with that. Always. Um, yeah, breath work just unlocks so much for me. I can journal by itself, but now it doesn't feel like it has the same impact. In saying that, years ago, journaling was the bee's knees. Still is, but in a different way. And there might be a different process that supports you. You know, you might be someone that likes to go and sit by some water or go be in nature or something like that, and you get these downloads and you get these messages. Really, what you're doing here and what I'm encouraging you to do is remove the layers of survival that are currently playing out in your life and reframe them with purpose or replace them with purpose. Right? Everyone works differently, everyone operates differently. So I'm not going to say you must do this process because, you know, what works for me might not work for you. But really, what I'm encouraging you to do here is remove the layers of survival that are currently playing out in your life. Get really curious about it and start to bring in more purpose, more passion. Start to choose you rather than choosing the job or choosing the money or choosing what you think you should be doing. Because ultimately, harsh truth coming in, ultimately, whatever you are doing that is keeping you stuck in survival mode is your choice. I feel a little bit mean saying that, but it is. Everything that we do is and have is based on choices we have made. And by choosing differently and by choosing you, what your heart wants, what your gut wants, what your soul wants, you're going to start to get out of survival mode because once you're connected to your passion, you just can't. You can't live in survival mode anymore because it doesn't, it's so obvious. It's like, oh, this feels gross. And getting out of it can take time and it can take a number of, back and forwards, but you can do it. As long as you choose you, you can absolutely do it. When you have purpose in your life, you're not surviving anymore. When you have purpose and passion, you're actually living. And maybe this is the first time you've ever lived. Sorry, something stuck in my throat. So, interesting timing for that one. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, there are a few journal prompts for you to connect with. I've got them in the show notes below. You can think about, you can sit with, you can journal on them, you can do whatever you want, but they are there to support you. So the prompts are, how am I currently living in survival mode? Get specific here. What does it look like? What am I doing? What am I thinking? How am I showing up? How does this serve me? How is this holding me back or limiting me? Because ultimately, survival mode probably does serve you in some way. For me, living in survival meant that I didn't have to deal with my trauma. And then, if I created more time for myself, what would I do? And if I felt deeply rested, energized, and alive, how would my life be different? Connecting with this, connecting with your why, connecting with what is important to you is going to go so far in getting out of survival mode and ultimately support you to bring your vision to life, to bring your dreams to life, because that's what we're here to do.